Welcome to Matters Financial, Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I wrote a piece over the weekend, which was what one could expect from the markets in 2018, and we did a short video of that article. And if you've got a second, just have a look. It covers pretty much the globe and frontier markets and my perspective on it. We put it out yesterday. It's on the front page it's on the top of Rich Wrap-Ups. In that article, I was quoting a district judge in New York, Richard Holwell, who said, "In the business, a subtle but crucial information advantage was called the edge." And truth be told, I think absolutely everybody is looking for that edge. Macro thoughts: Venezuela's implied annual inflation rate for the 3rd of January is 3,823%, according to Steve Henke. And then Lee Sachs tweets, "If I change my name to blockchain, will random millennials throw money at me?" This is the avocado blockchain economy, as it were. Home thoughts: I like this from Lee Sachs of the cold snap in North America. My brother was telling me it's -4 Fahrenheit, which is very cold indeed. On that note, let me give you an evening shot, a kind of blue. There's no filter. This was by the beach in Diani. We've learned that tourist arrivals defied poll jitters to rise by 7.8%. I was in France not too long ago and we visited the site next to Euro Disney, and it was intended to push through over 1.5 million tourists a year in this one project, and that's more than all the tourists we receive in Kenya. Rise and shine, morning world, and then a short video of the beach down there in Diani at 4:20 South. We had a wonderful time with Juma Senior, who's seen here with our fish, which was a white snapper, which we had in a curry. I've been reading some Lawrence van der Post, in particular Venture to the Interior, which is a remarkable book. He takes a flight that goes from London, stops in Khartoum, stops in Nairobi, and then the majority of the trip is in Malawi. It's quite fascinating, very interesting writer. And here's a quote: "It's not the not yet in the now, the taste of the fruit that does not yet exist, hanging the blossom on the bough." The Bushmen in the Kalahari Desert talk about the two hungers. There is the great hunger and there is the little hunger. The little hunger wants food for the belly. The great hunger, the greatest hunger of all, is the hunger for meaning. There is ultimately only one thing that makes human beings deeply and profoundly bitter, and that is to have thrust upon them a life without meaning. There is nothing wrong in searching for happiness, but of far more comfort to the soul is something greater than happiness or unhappiness, and that is meaning. Because meaning transfigures all. Once what you are doing has for you meaning, it is irrelevant whether you're happy or unhappy. You are content. You are not alone in your spirit. You belong. And I've also started Robert Ruark's Uhuru, which I never read before. It's turned out to be very good. And finally, final home thought, a photograph by Franz Lanting via the 1843 mag, Desert Elephants in Namibia, where a lot of the Bushmen came from. Political reflections. This is from RFI: Iran, une calme fragile dans la rue, les revendications sociales demeurent. Obviously, there are legitimate grievances, but I think they were substantially encouraged by some of the regime change diehards. I tend to agree with Pepe Escobar, who's written in Asia Times why there won't be a revolution in Iran. So what we have is a concerted attempt to turn legitimate protests into a revolutionary movement with the aim of bringing about a regime change. In all practical purposes, this would be civil war. Well, it will simply not work. Anyone familiar with Iran knows the country's civil society is far too sophisticated to fall into such a crude and obvious trap. Indeed, what is certain is that foreign elements are acting as provocateurs to influence the protests. This whole world is watching tone is meant to intimidate Tehran's response. Yet there has to be a crackdown against the violence, as Rouhani strongly hinted. Imagine the police response if the level of violence seen on Iranian streets was happening in France or Germany. Regime change is unlikely, but what is in play is setting the scene for a further renewal of economic sanctions against Iran. Possibly in this case by the EU, hopefully it will not fall into this trap. Tony Blair tells UK voters time is running out to stop Brexit folly. Fantastic photo montage of the new Silk Road in the New Yorker. This is by Davide Monteleo. The Silk Road was established during the Han Dynasty, beginning around 130 BC. Markets and trading posts were strung along a loose skein of thoroughfares that ran from the Greco-Roman metropolis of Antioch across the Syrian desert through modern-day Iraq and Iran to the former Chinese capital of Xi'an, streamlining the transport of livestock, grain, medicine, and science. In 2013, President Xi Jinping announced the Silk Road would be reborn as the Belt and Road Initiative, the most ambitious infrastructure project the world has ever known, and the most expensive. Its expected cost is more than $1 trillion. When complete, the Belt and Road will connect, by China's accounting, 65% of the world's population and 30% of global GDP. So far, 68 countries have signed on. And I wrote about this in an article that I called China Rising in August last year, when I said Xi Jinping's One Belt, One Road program binds the world to Beijing because all the roads and railways have but one destination, and that is China. Uganda denies it will host migrants deported by Israel. President Poroshenko posted this photograph of him and his wife. Now, there is this book that's been written about Trump, which is causing a lot of noise on the airwaves. I came across an article in The Hollywood Reporter by the writer Michael Wolff. I'm not going to read it to you in full because it's just completely mind-boggling. I interviewed Donald Trump for The Hollywood Reporter in June 2016, and he seemed to have liked and or not disliked the piece I wrote. Great cover, his press assistant Hope Hicks emailed me after it came out. It was a picture of a belligerent Trump in mirrored sunglasses. Since the new White House was often uncertain about what the president meant or did not mean in any given utterance, his non-disapproval became a kind of passport for me to hang around, checking in each week at the Hay Adams Hotel. A new president typically surrounds himself with a small group of committed insiders and loyalists, but few on the Trump team knew him very well, and most of his advisors had been with him only since the fall. Even his family, now closely gathered around him, seemed nonplussed. You know, we never saw that much of him until he got the nomination, Eric Trump's wife Lara told one senior staffer. I'll carry on jumping. The surreal sense of the Trump presidency was being lived as intensely inside the White House as out. Trump was, for the people closest to him, the ultimate enigma. He had been elected president, that through the eye of the needle feet, but obviously he was yet Trump. Indeed, he seemed as confused as anyone to find himself in the White House, even attempting to barricade himself into his bedroom with his own lock over the protests of the Secret Service. There was some effort to ascribe to Trump magical powers in an early conversation, half comic, half desperate. Bannon tried to explain him as having a particular kind of Jungian brilliance, Trump obviously without having read Jung. Somehow had access to the collective unconscious of the other half of the country and to a gift for inventing archetypes, little Marco, low-energy Jeb, the failing New York Times, I called him a linguistic warfare specialist. Everybody in the West Wing tried with some panic to explain him, and sheepishly their own reason for being here. He's intuitive, he gets it, he has a mind meld with his base. But there was palpable relief, an emperor's new clothes sought, when longtime Trump staffer Sam Nunberg, fired by Trump during the campaign but credited with knowing him better than anyone else, came back into the fold and said widely, he's just an effing fool. Another item, even Donald Trump can say no to his kids. It's a little complicated, he explained to Priebus about why he needed to give his daughter and son-in-law official jobs. But the effect of their leadership role was to compound his own boundless inexperience in Washington, creating from the outset frustration and then disbelief and then rage on the part of the professionals in his employ. Reigning over all of this was Trump, enigma, cipher, disruptor, how to get along with Trump, who veered between a kind of blissed-out pleasure of being in the Oval Office and a deep childish frustration that he couldn't have what he wanted. Here was a man singularly focused on his own needs for instant gratification, be that a hamburger, a segment on Fox and Friends, or an Oval Office photo op. I want to win, I want to win, I want to win, where's my win? He would regularly declaim. He was, in words used by almost every member of the senior staff on repeated occasions, like a child. A chronic naysayer, Trump himself stoked discord with his daily after-dinner phone calls to his billionaire friends about the disloyalty and incompetence around him. His billionaire friends then shared this with their billionaire friends, creating the endless leaks which the president so furiously railed against. What an effing moron, said Murdoch after one call. There was more. Everybody was painfully aware of the increasing pace of his repetitions. It used to be inside of 30 minutes he'd repeat word for word and expression for expression the same 3 stories. Now it was within 10 minutes. Indeed, many of his tweets were the product of his repetitions. He just couldn't stop saying something. As telling, with his daughter and son-in-law sidelined by their legal problems, Hope Hicks, Trump's 29-year-old personal aide and confidant, became, practically speaking, the most powerful White House advisor. With Melania non-present, the staff referred to Ivanka as the real wife and Hicks as the real daughter. Insiders believe that the only thing saving Mueller from being fired and the government of the United States from an unfathomable implosion is Trump's inability to grasp how much Mueller had on him and his family. Happy first anniversary of the Trump administration looks like a bestseller off the bat. Independent is saying Steve Bannon couldn't move on. Donald Trump was his entire world, his ticket to eternal fame and glory. And if Steve can't have Donald, apparently neither can we. I've written 3 articles about Trump. The first one was November 2016, Here Comes Donald Trump. The second was January 2017, Trump turns up the volume to 11. And the fourth was in May 2017, Apocalypse Trump. Those links are on Rich Wrap-Ups. Former US Ambassador Samantha Power on Trump. He's obsessed with Obama. It's bizarre. Seoul says North Korea has agreed to hold high-level talks with South Korea next Tuesday. Takes me back to September 2017 when I wrote about the screaming coming across the sky in the Schwarzgerät which is a black device slated to be installed in a rocket with the serial number 00000. International markets, as I said, my piece to start off the year is what to expect in 2018. Take a look. One of my trades was to be long Ripple, short Bitcoin. I said be short Bitcoin on a tactical basis. Against that Bitcoin short, hold a small long in Ripple. Ripple, according to Mike Novogratz, including the uncirculated coins owned by Ripple Labs, makes the company worth $225 billion, 10th most valuable in the world, bigger than Walmart, Visa, or Coca-Cola. I propose the portfolio bets about 2.5% of its value on deep out-of-the-money put options on a basket of 10-year bonds. The center of this monetary experiment is held since 2009. I'm just taking a bet on a high payout that the center cannot hold. I prefer to look for opportunities in the equity markets, which have been in the Goldilocks golden era, just below the headliners, things like Twitter, Play, Tencent through Naspers. Party like it's 1991, Japan's Nikkei 225 rallied more than 3% on its first trading day to its highest level since January 1992. Rose another 0.9%, closing at the highest level in 26 years, already up 4% this year. The Dow hit 25,000 for the first time as the new year kicks off with a stock rally. The Vice President Mike Pence celebrated the Dow passing 25,000 for the first time in its history. Take a look at what he said. And I said in my article in January this month, President Trump has cloaked his administration in the righteousness of the markets. The VIX traded below 9 2 days in a row for the first time ever. It's only traded 9 on 7 days since the index was created 28 years ago. As I said, equity markets have been in a golden Goldilocks era. We've seen prices rise almost in a straight line through 2017. Joe Wiesenthal tweeted record highs, then tweeted this: every time I smell pot, it's like a skunk crapped himself, died, rotted, was eaten by another skunk, which then farted in my face, so I'm not a fan. And a fellow called EDSBS says, Bill, give me your weed man's number because this sounds like insanely good. Dollar's rout poses risk of 2018 rally that blindsides markets. I'm bearish as I've been on the dollar, notwithstanding very strong economic growth. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro 120.61, dollar index 91.92. Japanese yen has been on a weakening track. 113.14, don't see it going over 113.40. Swiss franc 0.9753. The pound 135.51. The Australian dollar 0.7842. India rupee 63.385. South Korean won 1062.98. Brazilian real 323.46. Egyptian pound 17.7115. South African rand, about which I'm very bullish, 12.33. INGC sterling returning to pre-Brexit levels. Sterling was last at 135.51. Areas below 120 are now a long time ago, as I said they would be. Euro dollar 120.60. My target is 124 and then 130 this year. The Eurozone economy ended 2017 on a high. Composite PMI rose to 58.1 in December, the strongest reading in almost 7 years. Ripple, about which I was saying I want to be long and short Bitcoin, roared past 3 to become the second most valuable digital currency. My trade recommendation was long Ripple, short Bitcoin. London luxury home at unbelievable discount shows price falls. Interesting article. Prices in Fulham, from which I did not live too far away, are now 14.4% below their 2014 peak. Mark Zuckerberg says Facebook will look into cryptocurrency. Commodities are forging a record-breaking run of gains that straddles the end of 2017 and the start of the new year. Bloomberg Commodity Index tracks returns on 22 raw materials, posted an unprecedented 14 days of gains through Wednesday, closing the highest since February. Since mid-June, the Bloomberg Commodity Index has rebounded 12%. current winning run tops the previous record of 11, which was set in 2005. I was predicting in November, 13th November, that the spot price of Brent would cross over $70 a barrel. And Holger kindly put up a chart. You can see we're getting much, much closer to that target. This is another chart from J.S. Blokland. Brent oil, last time I checked, $67.71. US oil crude inventories were 424 million barrels, lower than the last week of 2016 and 2015, but still above the 5-year average. According to the Baker Institute, and this is definitely correct, the US is less exposed to geopolitical risks to its oil supply than at any time since the 1970s. Gold closed higher for the 10th day in a row, tying the record for the longest upstreak in history. That's data going back to 1970. Palladium just shy of a record high. Pakistan Stock Exchange has been among the top, most best performing market in the world in the period of 2 weeks, 19th December. Expensive oil in India don't mix well. No, they don't, says David Inglis. Ethiopian Prime Minister says he was misquoted over his comment about political prisoners all being released. It remains unclear how many people will be freed or when. So I concluded by saying the course correction was not a wholehearted one, because in October 2016, you will recall, I said the government need to change tack and effect a course correction, and history shows us that this course correction is one of the most difficult things to pull off. UAE-backed Egyptian forces have arrived in Eritrea. This is a report carried on Eritrea Hub. That would be a significant escalation. What will it take to fix the mess in Zimbabwe, asks Bloomberg Business Week, in a very good, comprehensive article. If you get a chance to go and read it. Over his 37 years in office, Mugabe impoverished Zimbabwe's 14 million people with a series of perverse economic experiments, formerly the breadbasket for much of the continent. Today, the country can barely feed itself. A national railway that once served as a crossroads for the region barely functions. Streetlights in Harare, the capital, long ago went dark. At about $1,000, the country's per capita GDP is less than 1/5 of that of neighbouring South Africa. Personally, I think Emerson should have played a more inclusive game, but obviously he's got a puppet master here, and that's the army. From an economic perspective, he is, however, making all the right moves. I've got to give him that. My piece was written in November in the immediate aftermath of the overthrow, and I said the genie's out of the bottle. Somalia was at war, and foreign fishing fleets took advantage, plundering 2.4 million tons of Somalia's fish, 80% more than official statistics suggested at the time. OPEC member Angola plans to loosen Kwanzaa's peg to the dollar. We've spoken about that time. The central bank governor says we have an exchange rate that does not reflect the truth. The possibility of a currency depreciation is great, he said. Foreign exchange reserves 14.2 billion from 15.4 billion in October, down from 20 billion at the start of 2017. Now, he made a controversial comment about debt. He said, we're developing efforts to renegotiate our debt with our main partner through 2018. Yield on Angola's $438 million of securities due in 2019 rose 32 basis points. In my piece, looking around the world, I said, I like what I'm seeing in Angola. I'm keen on being on Angolan risk, but I said this, which is the important point. The devil is in the detail of the execution, however. And that's what I was worried about in FX. But that's a very positive signal from an economic point of view. But as I said, the devil is in the detail. I would buy the Angolan Eurobonds on a dip. Mozambique's Eurobond has now recouped all its losses since the government shocked investors in October 2016 by saying it needed to restructure. I had said in July 2016 that it was a trading buy, more than doubled in price from that time. This is a photograph of Maputo taken from the sea. This is a photograph of the cathedral in the Praça de la Independencia in Maputo as well. South African all shares minus 0.05% this year. Cyril Ramaphosa will mean an erosion in the Zuma haircut and a substantial reprice in the value of the rand. Last time I looked, dollar versus rand was at 12.33. My target is 12, then 11, then 10. South African 10-year bond yield, the trend towards higher interest rates has been arrested by the Ramaphosa bump. That's from Karen Richards. I like this Afro-punk Josie. Nigerian all shares up 1.13% this year. The Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is up 0.54% this year. Tanzania Central Bank on Thursday revoked the licenses of 5 critically undercapitalized community banks. This was already previously signaled. The NASA leader Raila Odinga and his deputy Kalonzo Musyoka will be sworn in before the end of January, the People's Assembly Organizing Committee says. My conclusions are they are unable to exit a political cul-de-sac. In order to progress, the opposition needs to decapitate its leadership. I mean, come on. Britam, which rallied 36% last year, and where investors have agreed to come in a big way, the IFC's already in, others are coming in, issued a full-year profits warning. The expected decline in earnings is mainly due to a change in 2016 of the valuation method of the long-term liabilities to gross premium valuation methodology from the previously applied net premium valuation in compliance with the requirements of the Insurance Act as amended by the Finance Act of 2015. They are saying this one-off charge positively impacted the earnings in 2016 by 5.2 billion shillings. Without the impact of the one-off change, the company's performance has improved in 2017. Crisis, what crisis? Stanbic's PMI for Kenya rebounds sharply to 53, which is expansion from 42.8, which was an all-time low. Shilling's vulnerability to external shocks. In that, I was saying the thing that concerned me most was the price of oil, which is a large inverse correlation with the shilling and poses a risk. Foreign lenders seek to block Chase Bank's sale over 1.1 billion shillings of debt. Kenya shilling at 103.225. Nairobi all share up 0.27% this year. NSE 20 up 0.28% this year. Housing Finance issued a full-year profits warning, attributed the earnings decline to interest rate caps, unfavorable macroeconomic environment affecting credit growth in the period, and slow liquidation of some of its project loans. The company further states that it successfully paid off a tranche of one tranche of its 7 billion shilling corporate bond in October 2017. This is a shot of the night sky by Safari 254. Safaricom-backed online taxi-hailing firm Little is seeking to raise $100 million. And with that, I go and wish you a wonderful weekend. Thank you for stopping by.